Okay, thank you. So, I'm Vincent Danior. Our conference will focus on Agile, educational, and empathetic, a digital personal set linked to our user journeys, serving accessibility. Our main talking points are: who are we? What is a persona and what is it for? How a persona used in the field of accessibility? Why did we want to create persona set? How is our persona set designed? How can we navigate between persona and other tools? First of all, who are we? We work for Orange, a telco company, with around 180,000 employees worldwide, half of them in France. You must know that Orange is invested in digital inclusion. That's why Orange has set up a specific accessibility department since 2005 called EASE for e-accessibility solution for everyone. We're the only digital accessibility department at Orange. We are around 10 people, from project manager to accessibility experts. Wait a second. First of all, First of all, we give training. We have a catalog from awareness sessions to training courses based on profiles: buyer, project manager, developer, tester, project owner, designer, content provider, etc. All these awareness and training sessions are also available in e-learning. We also provide brand guidelines to spread accessibility in every Orange interface design. Accessibility guideline to explain in depth WCAG and mobile apps guidelines. We propose a ready-to-use open source library of interface components based on the front-end framework, the well-known Bootstrap. We call it Orange Boosted. We offer tools and methods so digital project teams can apply and test accessibility criteria on their own. And of course, with a team of accessibility experts, we support teams over the life of their projects and perform accessibility audits. It's, of course, the core of our activity. Moreover, to comply with French law, we create the accessibility statement for our websites and mobile apps. But let's talk about the French law on the next slide. Next slide. French and European accessibility laws, what are they? First of all, we have the European Directive on Accessibility of the Website and Mobile Apps of Public Sector Bodies, voted in 2016. This law forces public digital content to be accessible, and accessible means respect of WCAG 2.1 level AA. It was transcribed in the same year into a French law titled Law for a Digital Republic. This law, compared to the European law, has been extended to companies with a turnover of more than 250 million euros. So Orange is one of these. The scope of this law is pretty huge: internet, extranet, intranet sites, business app, mobile apps, digital docs, audio and video files, software packages, etc. The deadline is July 2021 to make for each site an accessibility conformance statement. And we have 3 more years to be definitively accessible. So you can easily understand that it's going to be a hard year and a busy year with this kind of deadline. Next slide. Natalie, go ahead.
Thank you, Vincent, for this introduction. Let's get into the bare bones of the topics. A persona set service serving accessibility. To begin with, what is a persona? A persona is not a real person. It is an archetype of user of a product or service built from real data, mainly from interviews, user tests, and surveys. It was Alan Cooper, 1999, who first suggested the concept of a user character in software design. What is a persona meant for? Keeping the whole target in mind, stimulating creativity, and also creating empathy. By using a narrative, pictures, and name, a persona provides designer with a vivid representations of the target. It helps them to keep realistic idea of users throughout the design process, to make right decisions about product features, navigations, interactions, visual design, and much more. To prioritize the design work, understanding what the user needs and what functions are nice to add and have. But how are personas used in the field of accessibility? Next slide. We study various elements of the use of personas, and more particularly in the era of accessibility. We found several studies using personas to represent people with disabilities. For example, Whitney Kesenbury created a group of web user personas to help illustrate a web for everyone. On the W3C's website, story of people with disabilities using the web highlight the effect of accessibility barriers on the broader benefits of accessible websites and web tools. The conclusion of exercise was that creating personas for people with disabilities can be invaluable for creating inclusive and accessible products. Accessibility personas help identify the barriers, frustrations, and common issues that people with disabilities face when using inaccessible products and often result in benefits of all users. Next slide. So, why did we want to create a personas set? The creation of personas set serving accessibility had several objectives. We wanted to create empathy for people with disabilities. We would like employees to understand that their disabled colleagues are just like them. They have a life, a family, and hobbies. Furthermore, all of us could be temporarily disabled. We all are concerned with accessibility, and we all have a role to play. Digital accessibility is not only for specialists, but involves everyone. For example, we all write emails, but for an email to be read by everyone, you have to follow a few simple rules. Via personas, we provide access to these rules. Second objectives. We do a lot of accessibility training. When you can involve a person with a disability, students immediately pay much more attention. But it is difficult to find people who are willing to testify and are available so personas can act as witnesses. Third objective. We also wanted to find a solution for designers and developers to implement our recommendations regarding accessibility. They need to understand why these recommendations are important, and we need to help them to integrate them into their project. Finally, we regularly carry out technical audits. When presenting the report, referring to a persona helps to concretely illustrate a problem. Next slide. Our persona set consists of 10 individuals. Cooper said, the more specific we make our personas, the more effective they are as a design tool. So we have 6 men and 4 women, ranging in age from 23 to 70. 6 work at Orange, like manager, UX designer, technicians, call center operator, accountant, intern. And 4 are Orange customers. Some live in a big city, others in the countryside. Some are married and or have children, others live alone. Our objective was to represent the main disabilities that could cause a digital accessibility problem. 2 of them are visually impaired. Angelique is blind and Marvin is partially blind. For the hearing, we also have 2 personas. Simon is a deaf man and Mehdi is partially deaf. Diane is dyslexic. Thomas suffers from musculoskeletal disorders. Tatiana has Down's syndrome. Suzette is an older woman. We have 2 more people. Henry is temporarily disabled. He has to lie in his bed for 2 months. He can only use his smartphone. And Dong is Chinese, and he doesn't speak French. He is also colorblind. Okay.
Oh boy.
Next slide. To meet our different objectives, we have created an online tool presenting 4 types of content. A technical sheet, a personal sheet, a summary sheet, and a poster. Let's look at them one by one. The poster. Here is Angelique's poster, on which we can see the photo of Angelique, her first name and age, her job and her disability, a quote that characterizes her, and a QR code that allows you to have access to the full descriptions online. We create posters to put them on the wall of the corridors and the elevators of the company to arouse the curiosity of the employees. We also want to put them on the wall of the meeting rooms to allow project teams to always keep their target in mind. Next slide, thanks. The summary sheet summarizes on an E4 page the information present a technical and personal sheet. It aims to be printed to be used during creativity and design workshop. Finally, next slide. Finally, there are two details files. The first, called personal sheet, describes the person's biography, passions, hobbies, habits, and daily frustrations. This sheet is rather intended to marketers and UX designers. For example, Angelique has been blind since birth. She is fluent in Braille and has a degree in English. She is also a talented pianist. Angelique is an active woman, very interested in her appearance. She loves shopping and knows how to apply her makeup. She prefers to walk and use a white cane on her GPS. Her frustration is that she can't listen to music when going from place to place because she needs to pay close attention to the noise around her for her safety. The sheet also includes additional hidden information, which can be displayed in pop-ups by clicking on links or information pictures. If you click on the word white cane, you will discover that there are also yellow canes for people who are partially visually impaired. If you click on the word colors, that you can see, there is an information pop-up which explains how to describe a color to a person who has never seen one. It is possible to associate it with a different smell, taste, sound, or sensations. For example, red is generally associated with heat, a sunburn, or when you are facing an embarrassing situation, your cheeks turn red. Likewise, the chili peppers used in spicy dishes in often red. Okay. The second sheet, next slide, yes, is titled Technical Sheet. It describes what use the persona makes of technology, what tools and assistive technology he has, and above all, what digital problem he may deal with. For example, at work, Angelique spends her time in front of the computer, listening with one ear to her screen reader and with the other to the customer. She uses a braille reader and keyboard. It can be very tiring. She would rather not have to use any computer technology in her personal life, but it's impossible not to use the internet. Example of technology-based limitations. Angelique has her braille reader configured to present just 2 links within a page. Links that are labeled "click here" are very annoying to her because the text is meaningless. This sheet is rather intended for accessibility experts, product owners, and developers. Next slide. As you can see the word links in underline, as Vincent will show you, each persona is directly linked to a guideline base, user stories, testing, and the corresponding tools and methods. Excuse me. Go ahead, Vincent.
Thank you, Natalie. What we are working on is the creation of all the links that bind each of our documentation and tools on our open source internet site. These docs and tools are the persona set, of course, but also the guidelines, our explanation of the WCAG 2.1 criteria, our accessibility testing methods, our user story set to use in Agile methodologies, and the method and tools used to test. All these are linked together to allow projects to have explanation on the hows and the whys, and to better understand all the implications and bonds between all these documents. Next slide. Okay. Navigation between persona and user story. The navigation, excuse me, just when you're a project owner, you can be interesting to access the persona related to the impacted public of a user story to know which type of real user is impacted by which kind of acceptance criteria. It's even more important when we talk about accessibility, of course. So these are the links available between user story and persona, but conversely, it can be informative to know for a certain type of impaired user what the technological limitations are. Each user story is built on the same template: a title, a description in form of, as an impaired user, I want to do something, an acceptance criteria in form of, given that I have this kind of impairment, when I use this functionality, then I can get that result. If needed, some specific management rules, the list of persona impacted, and the WCAG reference. Next slide. Navigation between persona and guidelines. Linking persona with our guidelines can, for example, help developers to better understand the type of impaired user who are impacted by the non-respect of a guideline, and conversely, when a developer reads a guideline, the type of user impacted. Each guideline is also built on the same template: a title, a target, the type of impaired user, the list of persona impacted, the project phases, when the guideline should be taken into account, a description, the list of things to check, a user goal, a do and don't, and the WCAG reference. Next slide. Navigation between persona and tests. The test has the procedures to follow to be able to test a specific guideline. So they are linked to guideline, but also linked to persona when a type of persona is impacted by a specific test. For example, a blind user and test on navigation with a keyboard. These tests are also built on the same template, a title and how-to that explains step by step how to identify the element to check, a list of checks to proceed for each identified element, the results expected, the profile that can test, like designer, tester, developers, accessibility experts, a list of persona, and the tool used if there are any. Next slide. Delegation between persona and method and tools. Sometimes you need an explanation on how to test a guideline because you have to use a specific assistive technology, a technique or a tool, and you need to know how to. For example, the way to use and test with a screen reader. It's why we are linking persona to our method of test. These methods and tools have not specific template. They are shaped, written as needed. Next slide. Persona sheet and links. Persona set are an essential part of our open source accessibility guidelines site. It's the heart of the system. It gives it life. The persona put the user in the center of the design process. Persona set will gather all the links to our documentation, tools, but also, when needed, there are links between our story set, our guidelines, our tests, and our tools and methods. Our tool, methods, guidelines, and user stories are already partly linked to each other, but persona set will strengthen these links and make them more logical. Well, we are currently working on the user interface and how to simplify it to be sure it will be usable and really helps project to take into account accessibility, be more empathetic with users, and embody users. We are still working on, and we hope it will be finished by the end of this summer. Next slide. In conclusion, this persona set is the last brick laid to our open source accessibility site. First feedback from project owners, UI designers, project managers are pretty good. This tool is useful, practical, educational, and agile. The persona set is at the same time the core pillar and the glue to build coherent accessibility documentation and a way to humanize our approach to accessibility. That could be the right thing to do, to be sure that teams will take into account the user and therefore accessibility during their digital projects. Thank you, and let's go to the questions.
All right, thank you so much, Nathalie and Vincent. Let's get into some of your questions. So Gabby asks, I've seen personas be used as an excuse not to have to talk to actual users. How do these personas intersect with usability testing in your practice? We're not really using persona in usability testing. When we following a project, a digital project in accessibility, we have specific employees with impairments, and we are
we use them to make some usability testing on the applications to be sure there will be no barriers for that kind of people, of impaired people, and much of the time it's people using screen reader, because screen reader is the best way to find accessibility barriers in an interface. So we are not using persona to make or to make a usability testing.
Got it. So you're not using these personas to replace usability testing.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So there's a ton of interest in your personas themselves. One person is asking if they are available for other people to use or perhaps look at or borrow from.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Sure, I can repeat that. So a lot of people are really impressed with the personas that you've created, and they're wondering if they themselves can look at them or use them, or perhaps.
Yeah, of course. It's open source, like all our guidelines and user stories and so on. It's as you can see on the screen, we have an open source site with all the persona will be put, I think, next month. They will all
on the summer.
They are all on the summer. Okay.
Yes, next on the summer.
Well, this summer there will be available all the persona, the 10 persona.
Yes.
On this location on the website, on our website. Yeah, and of course in English and in French too.
Yes.
Fabulous. So if for anybody who's on the stream right now, you can follow the website posted here, and in a couple of months the personas will be posted. Is that right?
Yeah,
yes.
Summer. Next summer, we hope.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Next question is, how do you make sure in your process of developing personas that you're being as inclusive as possible for people with disabilities?
We have made a lot of study on the different persona set already existing. We also ask a lot of people with impairments before doing our persona set. So we think we have something that represents all the kind of impairment in this persona set. But if there's something missing, we can of course add more persona to our persona set. So it's open. It's open source, so you can contribute. We will be delighted to have commentaries or
yeah, so people can contribute with perhaps their own personas and help them grow and develop over time.
Yeah, it's on GitHub, so can.
Awesome. Okay, and as a segment off of that question, can you describe a little bit further the data or the research that went into creating the personas?
Nathalie, do you have much more your domain. Yeah. Which kind of research?
No. We study different articles and we interview different people, and but we have
yes. Dis-le-moi en français, je le traduis.
Non, je voulais juste rajouter qu'on était concentré sur le handicap digital, enfin les personnes qui ont sur l'accessibilité numérique. C'est pour ça qu'on n'a pas tous les personas.
We don't have all the persona of impaired user, but we are focused on digital and technical impairments, and not all the impairments existing.
Sure. Great, thank you.
It's why there is only 10 personas.
Right. Okay, so the next question here is from someone who's looking to make inclusive personas, excuse me, at their company, but are looking for ways to help their coworkers and colleagues embrace accessibility when they're very data-driven. So can you explain how somebody might want to create personas at their own organization, but their organization might not be as focused on accessibility right now?
I think that one of a good way to warn people on accessibility and persona, it's to put posters on the corridors, the conference rooms and meeting rooms, linked with a QR code to a page on the site to explain much more about the persona. I think it's really, because when you see that poster and you don't know exactly what it is, it's really easy to flash the QR code and go to the site where you can explain in detail the persona and why it's important to take into account accessibility for that kind of person with this kind of impairment and so on. I think it's at least at Orange, posters have made the job to warn people on accessibility and technical problems of impaired users.
Got it. So really making the people around you aware of what accessibility is and what a disability is.
And why it's so important to make things accessible to this kind of people. Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Great. All right, let's see. Do you include people without disabilities in your persona set, or just people with disabilities?
It's only people with disabilities, because it's a persona set of people with disabilities. There is many persona set of people without disabilities. So if we need people without disabilities, we have many resources. But for people with disabilities, there's not much persona set already ready to use.
But we have Henri is temporary disabled. It's not yes, because everyone we can all our disability, temporary.
That's true, and a good thing to include, right?
Yeah. It's not a real impaired user, it's just temporarily impaired.
And
it's important to, yeah.
No. And we have also Dong is Chinese, and Chinese is not it's not disabilities, but when you don't speak French, we can.
It's difficult to, yeah, of course, it's difficult to understand.
And it's
or where you are French and you want to speak in English, it's sometimes a little bit difficult.
Right. Yeah, it's like a lot of accessibility features like captions, for instance, are really helpful to non-native speakers of that language, but are also great accessibility features.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So another question here is asking, how do you respond to advocates with disabilities who express concerns of the creations of personas because they can't completely replicate the lived experience and unique adaptations made in real life?
Yeah, it's a good question. Persona set is a tool. It's not. It can't be. It can't be real people, and it can be a real. It can be real situation. So. No, we can not really. It's not the aim of persona set to be a real person. So we cannot respond to that kind of question, answer that kind of question. It's not real. It's a tool. It's another tool, but it's not reality.
Right. Good point. You can get as close as you can with personas, right? But
yeah, but it will never be real.
Right.
Just a tool, another tool.
Good point.
Close to reality, but not real.
Here's another question about language barriers. This person asks, I'm curious how language barriers between people creating personas impacts persona development. So this person is wondering, does it help foster empathy, or does it create an additional barrier to, I guess, accurately describing a person?
If your persona set is in multiple language, it can be can help people with another language to be much more aware about accessibility, of course. But if there is a real language barrier between the persona set and the user of the persona set, yeah, it's another barrier. And the only way to be sure that it will not be a barrier, it's to translate your persona set in as many languages as you can. If you are a user, for example, at Orange, we have Polish teams, we have Spanish teams, so we know that one day we will have to translate it in Spanish and Polish, for sure. But it's it's hard work.
Sure. Well, a good accessible user experience should speak for itself, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I think we can sneak in one more question here. Michelle asks, how do you manage working with a large set of personas in your process? Do you check each persona for every single feature each time? Or do you select the personas specifically?
We are selecting the much impacted persona for functionality. And we only use these 2 or 3 persona that are much more impacted and that have technical barriers, the most important technical barriers. We are not using all the persona for each feature. It's too long to set.
Got it. I could see it'd be much more manageable that way instead of going through all of your personas for each piece of functionality you build.
Yeah, we try to choose most impacted users, personas. Yeah.
Great. All right, excellent. Well, so we can keep the rest of our sessions on track. I think we're going to wrap up now. But thank you so much, Nathalie and Vincent, for your presentation and your interesting deep dive into personas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming, and please enjoy the rest of AXCON.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.